This post may be a bit lengthy and I appreciate anyone who takes the time to read it. Last night I dumped my fiancé of 6 years and packed everything to leave our apartment after briefly confronting her about a situation that occurred a few nights ago. In this post I'll be calling my fiancé Jane and the other involved party John for anonymity's sake. Some background info about the relationship's history. We both met in high school senior year and we fell absolutely madly in love. I think our honeymoon phase lasted a consistent 8 months and it was one of the best times of my life to make it short. We did absolutely everything together and we grew as a couple every day, building each other up and supporting each other in our respective journeys. 2 years into the relationship we moved in together and everything went quite well until I started working a pretty shitty job while attending college. Because of the job's nature I became incredibly grumpy, disconnected, and just stressed. This would lead to me neglecting my girlfriend Jane and she ended going through a rough patch as well when she became briefly unemployed during this phase. Eventually she would end up talking to another guy on Discord across the country and I confronted her about it while coming home early one night and she simply denied she was talking to the guy. But I 100% knew who she was talking to and I let the guy know that Jane was in a relationship. This guy would briefly disappear after this after I spoke to him and Jane laid it out on me about why she was so unhappy in the relationship and I knew my behavior had been unacceptable. What she had done was emotionally cheating because she was trying to get emotional validation from someone else besides me because I couldn't provide it. So she resorted to talking one guy on Discord from Texas who gave her the attention she lacked. Fast forward 4 years, we are still together and we are extremely happy together. That night when I caught her we had a very nasty separation, but a combination of factors such as a lack of proper communication, my shitty attitude, and our poor living circumstances what I believed created our disconnection from each other. When we were apart for that night, it was impossibly painful and we both could not let go. We would go on to be briefly counseled and we worked on our communication skills so that we could explain to each other our problems and be as open as possible. 4 years after that incident, we have built a life for ourselves with successful careers and a nice apartment in a great area with 2 pups. I balanced my work and study schedule for her, and she did the same for me. We communicated about everything and we both shared absolutely everything without hesitation. It wasn't perfect, but it was going great. She loved my family and I loved hers, everyone got along and we also had a great friend group. My fiancé and I would do everything together, planning dates, vacations, hanging out at home, traveling for family, doing hobbies together and always had a great time. Even at 6 years we were still deeply in love because of the growth we had made together as a couple. We began planning our marriage and celebration for the coming month of August. Some recent changes. Since I'm finishing college soon I have decided to join the military to become combat arms. Jane and I discussed this heavily and she would be accepting of the fact that I had to go away for stretches of time, but she always told me and my family that I was worth every minute to wait for. She wasn't super happy about it, but she was glad that I brought it up to her early and that we discussed it in detail. She made plans for staying on certain bases I may end up in and she has made plans for an early signing of a marriage license before I ship off. She reorganizes the plans for the wedding and every day for the past few weeks she has been telling me how much she loves me and how she cannot wait to become my wife and mother of my children. I felt that we became closer than ever before the past few weeks. However, it is important to note that Jane started a new job position as car saleswoman in a heavily male-dominated workplace. It has been 4 years and I have absolute trust in Jane at this point. After working at the new workplace, Jane made a new group of friends that were pretty cool to hang out with, and I had a lot of good times with them. The only thing I wasn't super fond of was their propensity to drink and go clubbing almost every single night. We weren't huge clubbers, but we participated a little bit and had our fun. This is when Jane's behavior changes a little, I'd say over the last month or so. She would start going out a lot more for dinners with friends after work, which I had no problem with because I was comfortable with these guys and gals because I've hung out with them before. Jane would start helping out babysit a close friend's daughter more often, and Jane would start coming home at later times more frequently, and her work schedule would seemingly become more sporadic. She then mentions another one of her close friends at work, a tall white guy named John who was just recently dumped by his ex-fiancé a few months ago. She describes this friend John as really awkward, skinny, nerdy, and kinda gay, I think. Keep in mind, when we first started dating I was awkward, skinny, and pretty nerdy, but now I'm quite assertive and I have went from 124 lbs to 190 lbs since hitting the gym 2 years ago, so I guess maybe I'm less of her type now. The past week or so she had said how I've not been as excited to see her as usual and that I need to pay more attention to her. I understood these complaints and I worked to address them. However, this month has been a very stressful final semester of college and I also work full-time, so I had to do what I could. First, Jane would go on a Universal trip with a bunch of friends and I could not go because of work. In a few pictures Jane sends me, I see this John guy next to her and he basically invited himself to the trip. Next, Jane goes out to the mall to do stuff like pedicures etc. with her close girlfriend and her daughter, and John would invite himself to this and he then hung out with them while they were at the mall. This is where shit goes down. Again, I'm not super bothered by this, but the more that Jane talks about this John guy, the more uncomfortable I become. Jane would insist that he is probably just fruity and that's why he was dumped, but I've talked to John and I know that he picks up women at the club every single night. I believe this is a pertinent point. Come last Saturday night, Jane calls me and says she is going to go clubbing with her co-workers until about 2 a.m. or so, and I shrug it off because I'm busy as fuck studying and finishing papers. Jane has a great time, calls me up at 11 p.m. to join her for fun, and she sends me pictures of the group having fun throughout the night. I felt comfortable. A few friends of my brother were at the same bar, Sammy and Sarah, and they witnessed my fiancé walk into the bar holding hands with John and also holding him by the hips at about 1130 p.m. They sat down, were hugging, and no kissing. My fiancée Jane spots the friends and briefly separates herself and hastily talks to her girlfriend with anxiety. My fiancée Jane would then approach Sammy and Sarah and exchange the usual small talk. Sammy and Sarah witnessed the whole entrance scene and thought it looked quite suspicious, but they left briefly after talking to my fiancé. When they got home they felt really uneasy about the situation and they decided to go back to bar to see if my fiancée Jane was still there. When the two girls arrived, they were able to observe Jane and John standing in the bathroom line for a single-person bathroom. Once the bathroom became available, both of them went in together for approximately 4 to 5 minutes and then came out to go to another bar. This piece of information pretty much sealed the deal for me and I felt immediately broken, because Sarah and Sammy would call me about what they witnessed. The confrontation. I pack everything and I am pretty much ready to move out. Jane comes home from work usually at 8 p.m. but she was coming home at 1030 p.m. that night to pick up her girlfriend's daughter from a babysitter and then have dinner with friends. I sit down with her when she comes home and I told her that we needed to talk and that I really needed her to be open with me about Saturday. During the process of sitting her down, she was very fidgeting and her legs could not stop moving. I simply asked her to come clean about anything that may have happened Saturday night and that I already have the information I need from over 5 witnesses. She immediately cracks, saying that she made out with her best girlfriend, who is in a relationship, which was information I was not told by Sammy and Sarah. I actually don't have a big problem with this because she's kissed some hot women before and the results of the interaction were beneficial for both of us. But she did not bring up any more details until I had to drill her for the information about John, who was the sober one and the driver that night. So I began questioning her repeatedly and I told her to tell the truth for our sake. She then proceeds to confirm what was witnessed. Did she walk into the bar holding his hands and hips? Yes, she states it was because she was super drunk and unstable, which she does get very unstable. Was she hugging John at the bar? Yes, she states it was because he is a friend. Did she enter a one-person restroom with John for 4 to 5 minutes? Yes. Her explanation. She asked her best girlfriend initially, but then she walked out and my ex-fiancée Jane had to go pee really bad. So she asked John to take her to the restroom and turn around while she did her business. An important note is that my girlfriend has never been comfortable alone and feels especially vulnerable when drunk, but I believe she had the choice to get her friend to go with her instead of John. I assume she cheated in some capacity in that restroom and I never expect to know the actual truth about what happened in there, but my fiancé would repeat that she just had to pee and that she knew she absolutely crossed boundaries. I think it took about an hour to leave the apartment as she was hysterically hanging onto my leg as I refused to hug or touch her because I was set on leaving. A lot of my family now knows about the incident and my brother's friends let my brother know about the whole thing, so he basically hates her now. I've honestly never seen so much emotional and mental anguish from my fiancé before I left, and even though I believe she did wrong, seeing her broken like that absolutely destroyed what I once perceived as the love of my life. Before I left, she said that she couldn't believe I was leaving over 4 minutes of peeing in the bathroom. That our whole life plan, wedding, and future were all over because of it. I couldn't say anything to her. I haven't slept the whole night and it has been almost 10 hours of just nothing. Pure anguish, sadness, painful heartbeats, head is going to explode, leaving someone who I thought was the one because I have convinced myself that she did me wrong that night. I don't know if I've made the right decision. TLDR. Fiancé of 6 years goes out clubbing one night. Friends catch her walking into the club holding hands with close male co-worker and then she is later spotted going into a single-person restroom with the co-worker while she was drunk for roughly 4 minutes. I thought everything was fine because she sent me photos of the night and she really wanted me to join her.